Members of City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 13th, 2014, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Meeks? Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons? Ms. Randall?
Here.
Mayor Wright? Mr. Rowe?
We have one holdover from last night. We were going to show you the video on the right side of the river. We got it queued up, and it's so good that we want to start off this work session with that video.
That must be good news. I've seen it. It is wonderful. I've seen it on TV. It's really good.
So here's the deal. We're Portsmouth, Virginia, and we're not perfect. What city is? Some say we're on the wrong side of the river. A little too eclectic, too diverse, too real. But that's what gives us character. That's what makes us worth it. We're a city deep in history with homes and churches preserved for more than 250 years. Our downtown is authentic, alive, and our children's museum world class. Over here, life on the water is big, and our waterfront is amazing. So come take a look, stay a while. Maybe you'll decide to stay for good. On the right side of the river.
That's cool.
Oh, we're getting good feedback on that.
You're off to a great start, Jim.
Yeah.
Right side of the river.
Right side of the river, our new tagline. We have only one item on the work session agenda tonight, and that's budget discussion. We do need a closed meeting to discuss a couple things. And so why don't we go ahead and start with the budget. We don't have a presentation to make, Mr. Vice Mayor, at all. I've had no comments or questions about the general fund or the enterprise fund or the CIP. So I would recommend that we go ahead and discuss the issue that we kind of left off with last night, and that's the school budget. Yes, sir.
I think Mr. Moody had a couple of
Well, part of the conversation too last night, ultimately it comes down to the budget, was the regional jail issue. I think we left some questions unanswered on that.
We did, and we have a little fact sheet that's not the complete answer. Do you want to pass it out?
That was for your edification.
For my edification, okay.
Yes.
What are your questions about the regional jail?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the duration of the Chesapeake wanting to join the regional jail. The question is, and I think we like the Band-Aid, the fact that it's a Band-Aid, but how long is that Band-Aid going to be on? Because they, once they go back to their own facility.
No, they're joining the regional jail.
I know they're joining, but it was a question last night of how long.
No, forever. I mean, that once they become a member, that was not part of the discussion. They're not in and then out. What they have decided that this is the best alternative for them. And they were shopping other regional jails.
I'm not certain it's the best alternative for us. When I look at per diem cost at our current jail at 28, and compared to let's see, 50, they get ready to go up to $56 in 2015.
What's $28?
That's what we're being charged right now in our house, our inmates.
At the city jail?
Yes.
Well, the numbers we get from the state jail cost allocation report indicates, and it looks at every local jail, every regional jail around the state. It has the The operating cost per inmate day at the regional jail, the cost are $68. The Portsmouth City Jail at $67. So, I mean, they're pretty comparable right now. If you look at the way the state,
Well, we got numbers saying that figure's quite a bit
I don't have
lower.
those numbers, guys. I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
this comes from the state report.
Yeah, and that's not even taking into account the residual effects we get from the work crews. And last night we were talking about expanding that into the cemeteries. Maybe we need to have this topic for revisit this in a public work session again.
That's fine. I mean, I don't have the data that you're talking from.
Well, I'd be glad to share it. I mean,
And this is not one we got to hammer out before this budget is
No, sir.
approved. So we can do it
Yeah.
after the
Yeah.
budget.
No,
Yeah.
you gave us homework assignment. We started work on that last night, and so we took that seriously. And so I asked these guys to go back to the very beginning and not only look at the cost of this jail, local jail,
Yeah.
the regional jail, the Western Tyward Jail, but every other regional jail in the state. We take our homework assignments very seriously, so the first thing we did this morning was to, even after you had sent out your emails to staff, was to get right on this. So, yeah, this is a subject that it's going to take a little bit more time than just tonight. And it's not, if you're trying to decide what is the best for the city of Portsmouth, and if you ultimately decide how that you want to get out of the regional jail, then you need George's advice on how to do that.
And I think part of that discussion, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, was that since Chesapeake's being added, that kind of opens up the service agreement. And I think in anything that you belong to, there should be a way out that's not in perpetuity. I just don't want to see us to get into a situation like a SIPSA. You know, so many times we have these feel-good things about regionalism, but it seems like Portsmouth historically has gotten a short end of a stick on a lot of these regional organizations.
Don't disagree. Wasn't here when this was created. In fact, there's not a person that's involved with it now that was here when it was created. So I don't disagree with you at all.
Right.
You know, this is goes back to the late '90s. But yeah, we're working on this.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can you clarify what it is that's to me what's going on with the regional jail as far as the numbers, some different numbers that we.
Well, not necessarily different numbers, just a comparison of where Portsmouth makes out best, whether it's housing inmates in the regional versus our own jail. And the numbers, at least the numbers I have, say it's more advantageous to house them there than
At the regional jail?
Yeah. So, but we can certainly revisit that.
Brandon, I think one of the things that would really help is to go through the total layout as it was, but if this is the information I think they are requesting, where they can see how it was that we came to the resolve. In fact, I think we will benefit because our numbers were going down had some of the others branched out. So I think we need to have a session where we can go through that information. But this was the best plan.
Yes, ma'am. And it will, as we said last night, there's several stages to getting this, to this multi-jurisdiction agreement. So it's definitely going to be on your agenda for the months to come.
Well, we just need to seize the opportunity now that it's on the table again and see if we can structure, for us being a host city, a better deal than some of the deals that have occurred in the past.
I know where you're coming from. I've been sitting here with you, so I know where we're coming from. And we're much better off now than we were. So I think we'll work out. Appreciate that.
That's right. Are we moving on or? There's stuff. So we're gonna find out about the service agreement.
And the cost comparison, I'll give you
We'll get
give
that.
you what I have here. We'll go from that.
Last night I brought up the CDBG fund that the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing, and me and Bishop have talked a couple times. Then we talked to Mr. Howe, and they have some funds that we need to relook at as far as demolition and acquisitions of 1028 Hash Street, the acquisition demolition piece, down payments for closing cost assistance, emergency home repairs, and fair housing. Their administration they asked for is a total about 1.1. My understanding we're giving them 263,000. The acquisition and the demolition, I think, is a necessary because we own the building right beside it.
We don't own it.
Well, we're demoing the building right beside it, right? And we got to shore that. Plus, it's a part of a whole, 3/4 of a block. All right, that's one piece. The acquisition of 824 Queen Street, that's another acquisition they need to take. The down payment closing cost assistance for their program, I think that's important. We get a lot of money from the state for low-income housing. And the emergency home repair, and the administration costs. So I know we're at 263. Can we explain why we cut it so far, and how can we put some of that money back?
Let's go back in time. In fact, we, again, like I said, we do our homework, and let's go ahead and load this up, Bob. Can you all,
Say it again.
pardon me?
What'd you just say?
If you want to discuss this, I'm ready.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Well, the discussion is really how do we fund them? I mean, that's really the question.
Well, remember,
I mean, the acquisition of the properties and the emergency home funding and the down payment and closing costs, are we just going to do away with those programs?
let's back up, may we? Remember the Craddock situation where we had to refund from our general fund local money because we did not meet the national objective. And you all asked me to ask the housing authority, will they fund that? And their response is what we were acting on your behalf. We were acting as your agent.
Right.
So fundamentally, when you decide to give them money, they're going to come back a year from now and say, we're acting on your behalf. Okay? So if a national objective is not met and money has to be refunded, the answer that they're going to give you if you ask them to refund the money is that we were only acting as your agent. So it needs to be clear among you all that this is exactly what you want to do, that this is your goal. Now, when you look down High Street, look across the street. Look across the street from 1028 to 1026 at the Cotaritas property. That's a big tract of land that hasn't been developed and is sitting there. You go west on that, you come to the old Portsmouth Glass Company, and that's owned by GPDC. GPDC has owned that for a long time, and there have been no takers. Keep going west on High Street as you approach the old Wynn Seafood, another large tract of land. So my question would be, what would be the purpose of buying this property? Because you want it developed? Well, you got the line outside this door for developers to do development is not long, and particularly that on property that's already in public ownership. And so I think that as you look at this, it's a question of priorities. The money this year is being proposed to be used in neighborhoods to do such things as sidewalks. You all get requests for sidewalks quite frequently for neighborhood improvements. So it's just a question of priorities. Do you want to put it into acquisition of land that you're obligated then to meet national objectives? And if you don't meet the national objectives, you have to give money back. We gave back nearly $400,000 last month, and that is the money for Craddock and the money for the old Oasis building too, because they had disposition money that they had told HUD that we're going to use about $20,000 to dispose of not only the old Oasis building, but that same tract of land that I was talking about just before Wynn Seafood as you're going west. And so HUD is dead serious about this. This money comes with strings. This money comes with national objectives that have to be met. And if you tell HUD that the objective is blight removal, and then you come back and say, oh no, we were just joking, it's economic development, HUD's going to say, give us the money back. Give us the money back. And just don't listen to my voice. We've asked the area director to come down and talk to you all, because this is how serious this program is. What's in play here is our ability to deliver on meeting the national objectives that are set forth in federal law.
Now, when we give it back, can the option be, does it come back out of the CBDG?
No.
No, sir.
So that,
It's not like the CCDI
that's
situation.
not an option.
Which we said, we'll go light 1 year. They said, absolutely, it's got to be your money, and you got to pay it now. You can't pay it over 3 years. Let's go through this.
Let me just do some might help here.
This is, well,
First, I think John, let me just suggest one thing. We straighten out a couple misunderstandings about the budget. This is what PRHA submitted. If you see the first column, emergency housing rehab, that's totally funded in the budget.
Yep.
Okay. You look at the emergency rehab admin, that's
Well,
their
they're at
staff
195, you're at 120. Oh, with the 70 account.
Yeah, with the
cost.
seven.
That's fully funded. Fair housing compliance, they asked for 32.
Yep.
We've got 30,579, pretty close to full. The drop in the CDBG administrations, because there's got to be a relationship between the CDBG programs you're administering, how much money you're given to administer them. Since they're not proposed to get as much, that number comes down. So they requested, as you can see down here, their total request was almost $1.7 million. We only get 1.4 total in the budget. So that's what we started with from PRH.
456,000.
That was a park.
It was a park, but that's in y'all's 5-year plan, so you can scratch that.
That's at Westbury. That was a park request, which included.
But you're going to do one at the Elm Street Recreation Center, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was their request. So the real questions are getting down to, I'd say, a couple of things. The two acquisitions and two acquisitions, which we show right here. And the question you're raising about the down payment and closing. And you're correct, the down payment and closing is at zero. This year, we gave $130,000. They spent none of it. So we didn't propose putting extra money in when they hadn't spent any this year. So that's the reason for that being zero there. That's certainly an item that could be revisited if we wanted to put money in that account. But based on past program, there wasn't really a purpose to.
Well, they have to sell so many houses, 18 by end of the year, correct?
That's not funded by this, necessarily by this program. But that's an area where the reason that was zeroed out is because they didn't spend any this year, and then they came and asked for more for next year. We just didn't see the connection. That's, again, an area you can take a look at. If we move to the 1028 High Street question, remember, and I think John made a very good point of talking about kind of what you get into when you go down this path. Here's 1028. Bear in mind, recognize there's a national objective here. Their national objective is slum and blight removal. It's not economic development. So that is to clear and leave you a piece of green property out there. And to comply with HUD, that's what you leave it as. So you've got you got 3 years to do that. The building is currently occupied. We have a tax-paying property owner in there, so you'd have to have them moved out. And if the intent is ultimate redevelopment, and this is the important part, if your intent is ultimate redevelopment, you're gonna have to pay HUD back fair market value for the property when you move it off the national objective. So when you go to put a Starbucks in there, or whatever you put in there that's not a low-income user, HUD says, well, that's not your national objective. You owe us fair market value for that property. So there will be a repayment likely in there if you go down this path as a redevelopment project. Here's the budget acquisition that they provided, $208,000. Remember your total budget amount you're working in this year. They wanted $208,000 for acquisition and $190,000 for demolition.
Yep.
So that's about $400,000 for that one building.
Are we capable, I know the old Portsmouth Bowling Center back, 10 years ago, we took that building down in-house and did a pretty good job of it.
To answer your question, can we do something like that? Yes. I think there's a question, and I just want to put one thing in perspective.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation before. Remember, the CDBG money is the city's money. This is city council's money to decide what you want to do and how you want it done. So there's more than one way to acquire property. There's more than one way to demolish property. And when you use CDBG funds, when you get into that, you just have to recognize.
What you could do, you could give that money to the EDA. The EDA has the same authority. You are the recipient. HUD's going to look to you and no further. And it doesn't make any difference who you contract or subcontract with. If there's a glitch, it comes back on us. And so this is not the only way forward to acquire property. But when you acquire property, you've got to match it up with the national objectives that are articulated, that are specified in the federal act.
And I just want to answer one other question. You mentioned this fact about acquiring 1028 because of its proximity to 1020. 1020 is scheduled to be demolished next month. So
Yeah,
there's no relationship now to this shared wall. That's a non-issue.
It's got to be shared up.
That's part of the budget. It's already been accounted
Who's
for.
demolishing it next month?
That's PRHA's handling that contract. I don't know who they've selected. That's being handled through PRHA, but they've gone through that process and the schedule. They're taking it to their board next week,
Yeah.
and then that will be scheduled to be taken down by the end of June.
Okay.
So this question that was raised originally about needing to do that because of the shared wall will become a non-issue. That's already been engineered. It's already been taken into consideration for the demolition plan, and that wall will be shored up at the point of demolition. So this connectivity between these buildings, because that wall, to me, is at this point become a non-issue.
Hey, Bob, I just wanted to revisit the, I look at this, the down payment money, because we're trying to promote home ownership. And otherwise, without that assistance, there's a lot of people will never become homeowners. And I want to make sure that assistance is available to those who need it and qualify for it.
And I just want to add one other thing. Bear in mind, we do have home funds that can also be used for that.
Yeah.
So we have other programs, we have other ways to provide assistance. But I think if city council wants to put money in down payment assistance.
How much do we have in home funds? I know you told us in a meeting.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
I thought you just said that the money was allocated, wasn't
For what?
used for that.
The CDBG funds.
Yeah.
Monday.
That's the money went to PRHA for down payment closing assistance. This year, they didn't spend any of it.
So there was no need.
Well, that money,
I have a hard time believing there was no need for closing assistance.
so I'm just telling how the budget went. I mean, I can't,
Well, I want to make sure that money is available for down payment assistance for those who, because without some help,
and as I was saying, if council, the only thing I just bear in mind, if you wanted to move money as proposed this year over to that account, we just have to take it from something.
Somewhere.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's,
But remember what Bob said. Bob said that home funds, which is different from community development block grant funds, are available for the same thing.
So we
Okay.
have some additional funding that,
I thought the home funds were also going to use for 18 homes. Now, I was on a meeting with y'all over that.
we've got plenty of home funds.
Okay.
You do?
We do.
Are there less strings attached?
I wouldn't say that. There's strings attached. Federal money's always got a lot of strings attached.
Stipulation.
Because it's-
Qualifying property owner. The biggest problem you get into is getting people qualified in the first place. And that's really been, quite frankly, one of the reasons some of this hasn't been working is PRHA is having a harder time qualifying people, and they're trying to push further and further down people less and less qualified.
And part of the qualification process is being able to come up with a down payment. And to meet some of those objectives that John talked about earlier, if we don't have if they don't sell the homes, then you can't meet the objectives. So if we can meet their objectives by providing that down payment money.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and I would agree with that. I would just say that we also have another pot of funds that can do a similar thing, down payment assistance.
But
The thing is getting qualified buyers so you can actually,
I guess I'm trying to figure out why would we go to another part if that part's already designated for that? If we already have money designated for that, why we need to go somewhere else?
Okay, go back a slide. You're talking about down payment.
$215,000, $215,500.
that's what they asked for, 215. Last year they had 130 in the budget for
And didn't use
2014.
it,
They
didn't spend
use it.
any of it.
Did they send it back?
No.
Did they send it back?
It's just not spent.
It hadn't.
Well, where is it?
We'll be reallocating in your budget this year.
Okay.
It's just not spent. It's not lost. It's just not,
Okay.
it's not spent for that
But
purpose.
what is the reason
total
why it
budget-
wasn't? Did
Bob
they-
can't answer that question. He doesn't know. And
I also said, that money's for PRHA's.
Irregardless of what happened with that money, I want to make sure that we have these money available to persons who otherwise would never own a home, and while we're trying to promote home ownership in the city of Portsmouth, and if we can do that with just a little bit amount of money, we ought to do it.
And we also have available, what we're trying to tell you is that we have home funds available for the same thing.
So I get that. I'm saying if you got it here, why we need to go to another avenue if you got it right here? If we can do it right here, is there a rationale?
Because it's a matter of scarce resources. And if you can take it from home funds, and if you can maximize the use of your community development block grant funds by going into neighborhoods and still meet both objectives, create a pot of money that you can use to help make a market, and that's what you do when you do down payments. And if you can do that through home and the residual of the money that was left over from last year, and then still do neighborhood improvements, that seems like to me a win-win situation.
Who would execute the home funds?
City does.
Now, if I'm sitting in PRHA, then I'm seeing you're taking that money from me and you're using it. If I'm sitting on that board, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm sitting on the board. I'm telling you, I wish the demolition and this, and y'all are looking at me like I'm crazy.
Well, let me ask you this. Is this the number
I mean,
one
if that's
priority?
the case, why do you have a liaisons?
Is this the number one priority for demolition for you? I mean, as the council, is that building, 1028 High Street, the most important building to demolish next year?
I think you just presented a case that it isn't,
It is not.
based on the
We'll have another
no demand
slide.
right
And
now.
remember what you're doing. When you give them money for that, technically you're asking them to do it. You're telling them that's your priority. It's not their priority, it's your priority.
I think it might be helpful if you saw the slide on the Oasis, the
Yeah.
1020, just to give you an idea how that project went.
Of course, my question, John, in presenting that case, my question is, what are we doing to market that property that's already green across the street?
Well, you had to give back money because not much was done. HUD said you had how much money appropriated? 51,000, something like that, for
paid back
disposition.
for the
You
two.
paid it back last month.
Yeah, this 1020.
In other words, we didn't have any money left to market the property.
You had money, it wasn't, and what HUD is saying, the property's still sitting there, vacant. Give me my money back.
Now, I'll just show you, here's the Oasis. Look back to when you started, 9 years ago. That's when the council put CDBG money in for acquisition, was acquired 2005. This is the one you just pay the $19,000 back for the ineligible use of disposition funds because they never disposed it. This project was also subject to a HUD Inspector General from citizen complaint. Citizen is still out there, so if you go 1028, you can expect a similar complaint. They spent a year and a half working through the process with the state, and there was an additional $177,000 for demolition, which is what we're doing right now. We've accelerated. PRHA's schedule they gave us this year was to carry this until March of next year. And as you know from our meetings with HUD, that's just not, in this kind of a scheduling, this is not acceptable to drag these things out in perpetuity. So we accelerated. This is what we did. We pushed this thing into getting it down in June, taking CDBG funds to get this building taken down, because we've got 9 years in on this one piece of property. And I'll just remind you of this one. This was a slum blight removal. So when this property gets developed, somebody's gonna have to pay back HUD fair market value for the property when it comes out of its national objective, unless you leave it green.
And that's somebody's us. I mean, that check will have to be written by us.
So that's just one of those things to be aware of. There are strings attached to the money.
So that's one
When
of the
you take it,
strings.
this is the string. If you come out of your national objective to go to economic development purposes, and I think that's a real point here, to be very clear about what your intentions are. If your intentions are economic development and you call it slum blight, you know you're gonna have to go back and tell them that's not what I really meant. I really meant economic development, and they're gonna say, that's fine, pay us back, fair market value for the property, whatever that turns out to be at the time.
That also covers residential as well as, is that still considered commercial?
Very, exactly. So that, just to give you an idea where we sat with at 1020, that building's been since 2005 in this process. And so, you know, when we look at that, there are other avenues.
But begs the question is, should we even be using that tool for
I think that's a good
that
question.
purposes?
And that's what HUD is asking.
And-
That's the key
That's
deal.
the, that's the,
question.
that's the question right
Really
there.
the question right there.
And from what I'm hearing,
Well, let me show you
I don't
one
think
more.
it should be.
Just answer this other question. We have 824 Queen Street, this vacant lot. So it's right here, this is Queen Street. You can see the Hardys in the background, very small parcel. Now, it looks like a small request when you look at it. They want $30,000. It's back up here. They want $30,000. Seems like a small amount of money. Let's look at the proposal to acquire get some sort of a fast food restaurant in there, which we don't have one lined up yet. They want to use low-income economic job creation as the national
Incentive.
objective. When you do that, there's all sorts of documentation. You see right here, document is 51% of full-time equivalent jobs are held by persons who are low income. If you hire somebody who's below 18, you have to document their entire family. It's a big ordeal. You get some fast food restaurant in there to do that. It's a ton of strings to get hold of. $30,000, just in my opinion. That's an awful lot of HUD
To do that.
$30,000. And if this was a council priority, I'd tell you to find an alternative way to pay for it than using CDBG funding, because this is a nightmare.
We've really been hurting ourselves.
We have that.
This is not a good way to
Well,
go.
for that little bit of money, why won't we just give them the money to do it then?
Right.
Or do it through the EDA.
EDA,
When the
right, that
EDA
makes
does it,
sense.
we're doing one on Effingham.
Apples and oranges, we give them money to pay for it, we don't have to use it, we can afford that.
We're using the wrong tool.
Well, it's housing authority, whatever, if it's $30,000 to $40,000, we get the housing authority $40,000 to do it.
Well, I think you need to decide, who's going to be your economic development arm. I mean, if you want a fast food restaurant, do you turn to the housing authority or do you turn to the EDA?
EDA.
We're doing a fast food restaurant on Effingham through the EDA. It's going smooth as silk.
Yeah.
It will have none of the requirements it's a straight up deal.
Makes sense to me.
We're doing fast food restaurants on Frederick through the EDA. There are none of these strings attached.
But I think we need to bear in mind there are specific guidelines in how we use the funding based on what the criteria is. And we may want to step outside of the fence, but you are fenced in because they are very specific, and it can come back to haunt you.
I think you saw that last month when we had to pay
There you are.
that money. There's
Yeah.
there's the fence around you if you don't meet the national objective. And they've gotten, in the last few years, they're just not letting these things do like the 2005 on. HUD's not interested in projects that don't happen faster. Their intent is to
Right.
turn these things over 24 to 36 months type time frame.
Think of being at the top of the hill, okay? That's Congress. And you come down the hill, that's HUD. You come down the hill, you get to the area office. The area office manager is not going to throw his career away because he's agonizing over whether or not Portsmouth is doing the right thing. He'll pull the money.
Some of these things are doable if you know what the outcome is and you're willing to pay them back the fair market value, but just to do it and not have
A plan.
a whole plan there,
Well,
I mean,
That's a
it's,
very good point, Mayor, because you go back to the old Oasis building. I mean, that goes back to 2005, and that's what HUD is saying. How long, Jiminy Cricket, how long is it going to take you to dispose of the building? And then they look at it and they say, well, it's not even demolished.
Too far. Let's look right here. This is the one you're talking about before. Here's 1500 High Street. I think you're familiar with that, down by where the old Wynn Seafood was there. This property was assembled between 1989 and 2000. And that's the one you just paid HUD back $40,394 on.
That's where the church was going, right?
That's where it was talked about at one time, and that would not have been an eligible activity under HUD's rules anyway to put a church, out there. But that's another property that's been around for a long time.
so Bob, how often does HUD or someone from that office call and say, what are you guys doing with that?
These days,
Yeah.
monthly. They're tracking us daily. They can see our activities through the IDIS system. They can track our activities. We get these letters coming in saying, what are you doing about these things? That's what we have been discussing, going back to them with what we're doing to try to respond. For example, in the Craddock situation, that's one of those they've been saying, this has been going on since 2006. You've got over $1 million expended out here. What are you doing?
And they have put us on a watch. It was March 28th that you went up there and met with Ron Leggett. And they said, one of several things is going to happen. Either we're going to send the IG down. We already have you on a watch.
That's right.
Are we going to pull all the money? You're not going to get any further money. We're not going to give it to non-performers, and it's about performance.
So if we were right now, if EDA had a deal to go on that piece of property, we couldn't do it
We don't
because,
own
huh?
it. Because we don't own it.
Because we don't own it.
We'd have to.
Go to the
we'd have
housing
to-
authority.
And
we have a
whoever,
similar situation. We have a unannounced business that's looking at a piece of property that would be a very good development
Potential.
for the city. It would help our tax base. We don't own it. The housing authority owns it. And we're trying to dance around that very lightly and get the job done so that we can all be winners in this. The community can be winners. We're talking about a development that would help our community and its citizens. But it gets complicated because we don't own the property.
but in the mayor's scenario, he just mentioned if EDA wanted to place a business there tomorrow, whoever that business was, somebody, whether it's us or the private owner, would have to pay fair market value back to HUD.
Well, they'd have to go negotiate with PRHA.
Right.
Then we'd figure out what our exposure is, if any, to HUD coming out of that.
But you're right,
deal.
Bill.
And that depends on how this property was acquired, what was the national objective.
When it was
If it was, for example, slum blight removal, then that meets the objective. That's slum blight removal right here.
What does our comp plan say about that? Is
Oh, this shows this is developable
is-
property.
But is PRHA's idea for that property, does it in line with our comp plan?
Well, I couldn't tell you what their idea is for the property. I would say our comp plan, the zoning that you adopted form-based code zoning, the plan that was adopted back in 2009 and 10, does not show that as open space. It's developed property in there.
Okay, so that's occurred since then.
Yeah, since
Look,
then.
you have to think strategically. How do you want to spend this money? If you want to spend it on demolition, then what is the most important building to bring down, and how do you bring it down? Do you bring it down with CBDG money that will have strings, or do you find another funding source? We have although we claim to be a small city of 30 square miles, we still have a lot of vacant land that's waiting in the line to get developed.
Well, I'll go back to what I said initially. If it's a blighting, and I think we all agree that that's certainly a blighting influence, and it's a very simple structure, and we can bring it down in-house, I think we can bring it down a whole lot less expensive than that $120,000.
Yeah. If you're talking about 1028, it gets a little bit more complicated because it's an occupied building. There are HUD rules on how you relocate and what you have to do to relocate an existing occupier or tenant.
Another string.
Well, I'll just add one thing, and this is just one of those strategic questions you get into. When and I showed on one of these slides back, when you go back to using PRHA staff to do these projects, and I'm not just saying that, just point out, you're gonna have a cost to their staff. You can see it right here. There's 3 people right here. This is $32,500 of staff funding for the demolition. If you use city staff, you're already paying for that. That would not be a project cost because that's already in the city budget. So just bear in mind when you're picking which agency or avenue you want to go into these things, some of these things have costs. Like for example, if you go back here, here's the acquisition. You can see there's another, 3 people that are funded in the acquisition fee. So you got about $50,000 or $60,000 of staff money tied up in these projects in the proposed budget. This is what they've proposed. There may be other
It's better to
avenues.
fund projects, bricks and mortar, than it is people with this scarce money.
I'm saying if we got the expertise, the equipment,
Use it.
let's use it.
Use what we
Absolutely.
got.
You have a landfill. I mean, the only thing from that goes.
Yeah, we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
And we're kind of bouncing all over the place, but we need to make sure from a comprehensive perspective, we clearly know what we want as a city. And it may be in our comp plan, or we need to address that, and that all of us are going in the same direction. We don't want that EDA or PRHA. It's the reason why we started having those jointly quarterly meetings to make sure we kind of discuss those things and to strategize. I mean, I'm concerned about I must call him once a week about the Frederick Boulevard piece and what we're doing across the street there, which that's PRHA's property. We need to be making sure that we're working together, we're marketing it together. I know we have different walls up that limits one from doing something versus the other, but this is a citywide initiative, and we've got some golden opportunities, and we don't need anybody going in the opposite direction or anybody playing, I'm gonna take from your rice bowl to the other. The home ownership piece and the down payment, if we've got it in home funds, it doesn't sound like we got a problem with the assistance capital. It's qualifying the people. Is that correct? So if we have someone in Portsmouth that qualifies for that, we've got home funds that we can make available? Is that what I'm
And
hearing?
We'll do this. We'll go
Yes.
back and revisit the question, make sure we're not missing somebody in there.
Okay.
And so if there needed to be some adjustment made.
I mean,
put
that's
something
very
in there to
important
make
that we
sure it's
have
there.
that, but if we don't have people qualifying and we haven't, then we need to address going forward, what should we do there? I mean,
Take a look at that.
right. We
But I
don't.
think the key.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
The key is to make sure that our purpose is what's best for the people. It's not about me, my, I. It's all of us, because we are sharing in this. And
so
whatever we come up with is going to benefit our community and help our city grow. And that should be our purpose.
To the mayor's point, and I don't hear the comp plan mentioned very often, except when it's time to redo another one, and I think we're on the eve of doing that. But that should be our roadmap.
That's right.
Whether the PRHA, and it should let us know what agency to lean to in situations like this. A comp plan, I don't care who it is, should be referred to first.
You're singing a tune that we really like. And a case in point is in the comp plan, you have the overall comp plan, and then you have neighborhood or area plans. And we had one such that was presented to council in 2005, the fall of 2005, for Frederick Boulevard. And we're almost following that plan to a T. The development that is developing is the same that the council that was sitting where you're sitting now saw on sketch maps up here. Another thing that I've asked Bob, and I've told you this before, with the Martin Luther King Extension Project and the impact that it's having, it's like almost an urban renewal project from High Street over to 264. I've asked Bob to have a multidiscipline approach to let's come up with a neighborhood plan for that. What is the best use for that property 50 years from now? Is it residential? Is it mixed use? Is it something that's related to the port? Is it something that's related to the interstate? Where are the gateways on that? What do you do with that little bit of street that now comes off and goes towards our public utilities facility that's only got about 3 houses on? And how do we address those? So you're singing our song.
Well, let me ask, Danny, you, as one of the liaisons, what is PRHA's position and what is the strategy going forward other than we just need you to fund this stuff for our budget? I mean, did you pick up a strategy or what they're trying to do?
I mean, one, they want to make sure they still have a seat at the table with the city. They feel like they're being shoved down the street, and I think they expressed that to me. And I told them, I said, look, when we go to talk about budgets, I'll bring this up. I felt like I did. I see where y'all stand. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean,
well, they're going to have a seat at the table. They're valuable. I'm telling you, nationally. The HUD Secretary, Donovan, talked in front of hundreds of people about the projects that Portsmouth did with their money. Now, we're talking about just 2 projects, but there are 2 Hope 6 grants that PRHA got, and the federal government is extremely pleased with what we and they have done. And so, yeah, they're tools and things that we ought to be using them for, and we need to make sure that they understand that, because nobody's trying to cut them out. I hope they're not. No, I'm not. But we can't fund things that's not in our objective or what we're trying to do. But same thing for the city and EDA, we need to make sure what is it we're going after and what are we trying to achieve. And if it's not in this year's budget, then it's not in this year's budget. That doesn't mean we're cutting your knees off. Yeah.
Mayor, from being with PRHA, I feel the need that we need to come together and discuss exactly what we're discussing now with them.
right, what vision we have for them.
So that we can both see and both be heading in the right direction.
Same target.
I mean, some of the things that we just saw up here doesn't make sense. EDA ought to be doing some of these things and
Picking up the building.
The reason we, again, have those quarterly meetings is to address things like this. I think a couple of years ago, we expressed our displeasure in just having those meetings and the manager or somebody else just giving us a bunch of happy talk and bringing finance people in, telling us what the trends are going to be doing. Those meetings are set up for us to have that discussion with all of those groups. And we're still not having it. We're showing up and everybody thinks it's a meeting to say, we did this and we're doing good, and they sit down and the next person does it. And then we put some program on it wasn't intended for what we wanted. We want to have those conversations. And every project that they're working on, EDA, we need to be able to vent those things out and open to as much as possible. But that's the purpose of those meetings, not for you guys to just create an agenda so we can just go to Badawi and eat and
You've nailed it, Mayor.
That's it.
I look at those things, what we're doing now, we should be having this discussion at those meetings.
Yeah.
That's true.
They need to be a workshop meeting.
Absolutely.
Where you don't, roll your sleeves up, you're going to get a little sweaty, and we're going to hash out a lot of things around the table. Right now, we eat a dinner, dessert, and see a rehearsed presentation and leave, and we hadn't done anything.
Well, if I just add one thing, if you go back to the very first time we talked about the CDBG budget, I mentioned two things to council. The first one was based on what was going on with HUD, was the need for what I refer to as risk management. We can see what happens when you take a risk and you don't meet the national objective. They show up and say, pay me back. That's risk management. We tried to not put together a budget that continues to create that problem we've had from the past. The other one was trying to be very efficient. We know the budget from the federal government has been dropping. Your allocation every year is going down. You have to be much more efficient. You don't have as much money as you were getting 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. So as the source of funds shrinks, you have to be much more efficient and much more strategic. And I think that's back to your point and how you apply the money to get the best bang for your buck, because it is a shrinking pot of money. Okay. So unless
Your sense of this not having them at the table, is there someone there feeling that we're purposely,
No.
we or they trying to just cut them out of the loop? I mean,
No.
They just want some direction. They don't want to be a deterrent. They want to be an asset.
Right.
But and in order for that to happen, it has to be a team effort. So we all are clear.
Everybody would be on the same page.
I think I'm perplexed by the quarterly economic meetings too. You and I have talked about it. We tried to create a setting where the chairman would initiate the discussion. More of them and less of us. The venue, I mean, it's nice to go out there, but it's not conducive to really a sweaty work session. I like your suggestion where
think it's good.
you might want to go through and meet with the Housing Authority, the Planning Commission, the EDA individually, and then come back together in a setting like this, where you can see each other. You don't need opera glasses to see who's sitting 5 tables over.
We discussed it, but we didn't do it.
But the other thing is that I'm at a meeting weekly with Kathy Warren, representing the Housing Authority. I've been to Howe's office several different times on my own initiative. So, I mean, yeah, Portsmouth has done a lot with its Housing Authority.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening is that we have to be no nonsense, though, in our management of these HUD funds.
That's true.
Because if we're not, we have to send them back. And so we have to ask for reports. HUD has told us clearly, we want to speak only with you because you're our recipient, not anybody else. We're holding you responsible, so don't bring anybody else into the room. We're going to take you to the woodshed.
And I think we got all that loud and clear, and we got it before. I'm not trying to, I don't want to be dead horse, so I'm going to beat this one. Because your points are well taken on the demolition and all that stuff. But I'm still going to harp on this this down payment and closing cost assistance thing. And some of the objectives that the Housing Authority has to meet, something that we talked about before in other meetings, they're never going to be able to meet them if they don't have be able to assist people in doing that. So your points on other things are well taken, and your point on this one well taken. But whatever funds are available for that need to be accessible to the Housing Authority. Otherwise, they cannot get there from here, and we're crippling their efforts.
I agree.
and if they're a better vehicle for it, because if we're not in contact with those folks and the Housing Authority are, then we ought to shift it to them, because I don't want us saying we can do it, but we're not doing it. If they're right there at the threshold where the people are that needs it the most, then we ought to be letting them
They are the
do
vehicle.
it.
That's what they do. Like he said, they don't do economic development, but this is what they do. And that money has got to be available to them wherever it comes from.
They
That's true.
are the best and
That's
really
true.
the only for home closing, because it could be interpreted that if we assist somebody in home closing, that's a grant. And the Constitution prohibits local governments from giving grants to individuals.
That's right.
They can do it.
Authorities like, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, they
I
can.
thought they
They
could do
can
it.
do it, aren't they?
That's where I was going.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
That's what he said.
And so I was just reinforcing what you said. Let
So
us
if
come
they have
back.
someone, we can get the home funds that we got available and somehow
Right.
transfer it over so they can continue doing what they're doing.
We hear you, and we share that concept, and let us come back with how we can use home funds to accomplish the same thing.
Did we give Patrick or the EDA any money for acquisitions this year in the budget?
The nice thing about them is that we have given them land in the past at no cost to them, which they have now sold, and so they have acquisition money in their own budget. So you've done the same thing in the past. Go back to 2006. We were given the EDA $1 million a year to build up a war chest. Sometime in the last 6 or 7 years, instead of doing that, the city transferred the land, like the Norcom site, to the EDA. When that land gets sold, it now goes into their war chest for land development. There are no monies allocated in this budget to the EDA for land acquisition. And I would contend that they don't need it because
Right,
of
they
the
have a
land.
war
That's
chest.
right.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
That makes sense.
And just like we did with Effingham,
School board.
right? We transferred that property.
Potentially, that one has a cooperation agreement. It's
Yeah.
yet to be determined how much of that council will want to share with the EDA.
Right.
Let me tell you now.
And we're all in this together. Any other questions on that? Are you ready to move to schools?
Yeah.
Okay. We have been analyzing school budgets and expenditures for a good long while, and come to the conclusion that the recommendation that I have made for the appropriation for the schools for next year is still good. But if you all want to give the schools money above that recommendation, you've got to decide that, and you've got to decide how you're going to fund that. We don't have any presentation to make on this at all, but we do, of course, need a closed session.
Want me to
That
read it?
will take about a half an hour.
Want to read it?
Closed session for the school budget.
Half an hour.
No, sir. No. On something else.
Want to read it?
Again, I think that this disconnect with the increased cost that the schools are incurring and that they're saying that they're going to need, or else they're going to have to cut programs to be able to compensate for that, is a real issue. And it is difficult for me to understand why is that difficult for us to get our arms around it. It's either an incurred expense that we need to help them cover, or it isn't. And if we're not there and both sides are not convinced of each other's requests, I've said before, we can create a category, overage, whatever you want to call it, and put the funding there so those programs go forward. And if they don't need them at the end of the year, then the funds will still be available. If they do need them, then they come through us in one of our quarterly meetings that we're going to have with them and say, we need to transfer funds over for this, this, and this. So we need to address how we're going to handle that. You don't want people keep thinking that we're threatening to cut all of these programs, but they're saying if they don't get this money, then this is what they're going to do. And we're saying we've given them enough. We can't keep every week sitting in this position. So, I mean, what is the flavor of this council? What do you want to do?
Well,
I mean, you're going to be in here again tonight to midnight with people coming in here asking you, not to cut our programs, and if that's not what our objective is, and if we've got money, then we need to set it aside to be able to move this thing off the table.
Well, to begin with, I don't think we make financing decisions and funding decisions based on a crowd and who's turned out the most speakers.
Who suggested that?
Nobody. I'm just making a rhetorical statement. It looks like to me that their fiscal problems and I guess procedures seem to be on the road to recovery. I guess, Carol, is that an accurate statement? Do you see movement in that direction? Some of the email exchanges I look at seems to indicate that.
Let me say this. But for $400,000, it appears that Section 22.1-100 has been complied with about the return of unspent money.
Right.
Any money that's carried forward from one year to the next, that's operating money, still has to be appropriated, whether it is unspent or not. So there's still the $400,000 that has to be done. But I think we're on a road that is very, very good. It's much different now than it was 12 months ago.
And to your point, Mayor, what we did that very thing last year with the teacher situation. If you recall,
We didn't set it up in a way that they could make a decision. They had the trust that we would give them that, and we have destroyed that trust on both sides.
we gave them a blank check pretty much that we would cover it if you found yourself in a financial bind. Colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong, we sat right here at this table and did that.
I'm going to correct both of y'all. We gave them $1.3 million.
Exactly. And said if that wasn't enough, you could come back.
They didn't use it.
They didn't use it.
Well,
Use it for something else.
I met with Bridgeford and Costello, and I got a list here of what's funds. The VRS VLD hybrid increase is $2.6 million.
That's right.
Liability insurance increase is $75,000. Health insurance increase is $2.3. Homeless transportation increase is $156,000. The tech improvement, and we had kids up there saying their computers are broke, batteries are dead, stuff like that. He had $600,000. I told him he needed to move it up to 1.2. He gave me justification to $1,137,086. Student assistant systems, $50,000, and bank analytical fees. They need additional, pretty much about $6 million bucks.
Let me just say something. Before tonight's meeting, I went to see the manager and the city attorney. Talk specifically about schools and textbook fund. And let me preface this. I think everybody around this table supports the schools. Most of us went to public schools, and our children went to public schools. My daughter's a 2010 graduate, Churchland High honor graduate. This past Saturday, I got the opportunity to see her graduate with summa cum laude from Lafayette State University. Due large in part because to the preparation she got from the Portsmouth public school system. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to them about was appropriating $2.1 million from the textbook fund back so they have all new school books because we've been told that the curriculum has changed and need all new school books for the next school year. And I asked the city attorney to do an ordinance for me to add to the agenda tonight. And I was going to pass it out to you about later on, but since Mr. Mixon, you brought it up, I'll pass a copy of it to everyone now. What I intended to ask to be added to the agenda before we start up our public hearing tonight.
The three books are science, reading, and math.
And that will ensure that every kid who goes to, you got one there? that we're sure that every kid who goes to school next year has the proper materials and books they need to be successful and to take it to the next level. So that's my intent before we get started with our meeting tonight, to put that on the table, to make a motion for that. Hopefully get a second and approval.
Hold on one
in getting that money. And this what that does. This allows them, can I finish, Mr. Hicks? This allows them to do that. We appropriate that money tonight. This allows them to do this now and have those things in hand before the school year starts. And it would become an amendment to the current year's budget. If we wait until later, it becomes part of the next year's budget, and we don't want to do that. That's pretty much set. We do that now, and it becomes a part of this. Just if everybody's in agreement with that.
Yes.
That way the textbooks have to be expensed within the current fiscal year.
Right.
And they have to, and they will have to do that to get them in
Right.
time anyway.
All right, there's a couple more items. The activity fund,
That's on the agenda tonight for $378,000. We're going to do that tonight. also
what
as
about
well.
money finishing out the year? They got $30,000 floating, either good or bad.
For the year?
They're asking for $500,000 to finish. If they don't use it, they'll give it back.
Money for what? Where's the
They have
$30,000?
$30,000 in the bank.
What is that?
That's what he asked to request. That's what I told him I'll bring for.
Hey, guys, when you adopt a budget, that's an authorization to spend money, okay? Now, the budget has two sides. It has a revenue side and an expenditure side. The only way that you can run short of cash is either you overspend your budget or one of the funding sources does not come through. Okay? Now, to my knowledge, they haven't overspent their budget for fiscal year 2013, 2014. In fact, they tell you very loudly that they're not going to do that. To my knowledge, there has been no shortfall in the revenue side of the budget. You certainly have been providing your checks on time, and so is the state, and so is the feds.
They don't use it to get it back.
So if you're talking about a cash flow problem, that's something else, and I don't think that they have a cash flow problem at all. I mean, in looking at their finances, when you talk about cash flow, you're talking about a joint pool account that you use, not individual funds. As you think about what you want to do for the schools next year, if you think that my recommendation is okay, then you don't have to do anything. If you want to give them more money, you've got to do something. You've got to fund that. You're either going to have to raise taxes, or you're going to have to cut your own budget. You cannot use one-time money. Well, you can do it, but you'd be foolish to do so, because your one-time money is used up, and you're talking about a ongoing operating expense. And let's say that you want to give them $5.2 million. And let's say that you want to take that from the fund balance. We're going to have to issue bonds next year. You're going to get a bond, you're going to get a credit downgrade, because the bond rating agencies have already shaken their finger at us and said you're using too much fund balance in your budget. They would see not coming up with a guaranteed ongoing funding source as being reckless. And so as you look at whatever that number is, whether it's $1 million, whether it's $2 million, whether it's $5 million, beyond what's being appropriated tonight, this gets built into their budget, you're going to have a train wreck next year at budget time. So you've got to find a funding source. Either
That's why I keep saying, we're talking apples and oranges here. this resolution, the other funding that they're asking for is to, one, get out of this year, as well as be able to make these purchases that they've been asking to make on these textbooks now for over a month. That still has nothing to do with the going forward shortfall in their budget to be able to fund the programs for next year.
That's right.
You're asking to go hire a superintendent under a cloud of a man that's leaving and strap his finances.
And so we need to come up with whatever the mechanism is to be able to make sure that these programs that we want stay in place and are funded. And as we transition, as I've said before, in this categorical funding, once we get all of this money settled to what categories it ought to be in, it will probably take us next year to be able to realize, us and them. And again, we destroyed this trust between these two bodies, and it's not going to come back overnight. And I don't care what we say or what they say, it's about those kids and it's about those programs. And we need to make sure that that body doesn't go and vote to get rid of or destroy something because the perception is we're not funding it. And how we get around that, whatever mechanism we use for that, I could care less. But those programs need to be funded, and we need to make sure that they're funded. Yes, ma'am.
All right. I came on this council because of an educational deficit. And everyone in the city knows it because we were not putting money in our future, which was in our schools. And as a result, we were able to work together as a very comprehensive, and Bill Moody, you were here with us, in talking together where we were not pointing fingers. We have a crisis. We know that the children are indeed the future, and we know we are going to have to fund education. We shouldn't be playing ball with that. We need to come to some agreement as to what we are going to put out to enable our schools to operate, and the children who are going to lead us once we are long gone will be able to make decisions. But to come up and everybody not be on the same sheet where we can make sure of where we are in expending our money is not a way to resolve a situation. I know what's on this list because I've been through the list with some of the people. But the thing that I'm saying, let's do it in the spirit, it's the council working together with the schools to ensure that we have quality schools where we can have output products that we are proud of. It's not I brought it to the table or you brought it to the table. It's what's best for our schools. And when we get a little list together and we come in and sit it, all of us have been out there in that situation. You know where I'm coming from. You know where I'm coming from because I had to stand up and fight for it. And I'm not going to see us tear apart what we worked so hard to get. And I think we need to push, Bill, in getting this money in here to ensure our schools can open.
But again, it goes back, I'll yield to you in a minute. It goes back to this perception of this mistrust with these two bodies, that the whole purpose of this right here, this textbook money, which should have been back, okay, that we're purposely trying to run out the clock so they can't spend the money and they can't do the things that they need. And if that's not our intent, and that wasn't our intent, then we should have got in front of this thing before this perception started running rampant through the school system. So that's what they think, that we're purposely holding this money, trying to run out the clock so they can't spend it, and then we need to bring it back and then say, see, we gave it to you and you didn't need it. And if that's not our intent, then we should have got in front of this thing and not allowed this to fester on as long as it should. Dr. Fisher, a month ago, 2 months ago, went through this textbook fund Okay, Claude Parent went through it and talked about how they've been doing it in the past and what they utilize to get these things. Whether we agree with the methodology or not and how they collect the monies, they need to order the textbooks for next year.
Children should
And the
not
fact that we haven't given it to them gives this perception that we're holding up this money. So this thing is 2 months late as far as I'm concerned, but we got to get in front of these perceptions.
Let me,
Bill.
Thank you, Mayor.
be clear.
I think the mayor just touched base on it. 3 days, or a couple days after John's budget presentation, first words out of the next meeting, out of the superintendent's mouth was, well, if we go with that budget, we got to cut STEM.
That's right.
And to me, that's a political ploy. That's to get on the front edge of it. I think you touched base on it at our public work session.
Yes.
If you want to mobilize opposition to something, present the worst-case scenario, and it's been effective. Nobody, not a single member of this council has said that we're going to cut the first program, especially STEM. Hasn't been said. Matter of fact, we don't do those cuts. That's up to the school board. But what they were told right out of the gate was, well, if they do that, we got to cut STEM. That's like dropping a nuclear bomb in the field of education in the city. Mayor, to your point, the textbook thing will be this $2 million, albeit late. It's still at the 11th hour, but it's still time to order those books.
They're ready.
Now, the mayor mentioned something a while ago that we need to give them assurance. I say that we go with John's budget,
Yeah.
with our budget, with the assurance, okay, you do the proper fiscal accounting, and you justify your expenditures like they should have been done to start with. And if you reach, and I think we can track that on a quarterly basis, I don't think you have to reach the end of the year, we can track it quarterly. And if we find out there's a shortfall, then we have to man up, woman up,
And get the money.
And get the money.
There you go.
I think to John's point, we are playing fiscal roulette if we pull that money out of the fund balance and have the rating agencies lower our bond rating. That's going to be the most costly way to fund the schools because our debt service is going to increase tremendously. So I say we track it quarterly. If we find out, we give them assurance, and I think that assurance needs to be in a written agreement, no nodding of the head or shaking hands. I think it needs to be in a MOU as to what we're going to do. But we got to get this thing out of this mode of I don't trust you, and my 2 and 2 is 4, and yours is 4.2. That's a bunch of bull. It's adults, 2 adult elected bodies that are answerable to the people of the city. And by golly, math is math. 2 plus 2 is 4. I don't care whether school board is doing the addition or the city council is doing the addition. And we've had other sources say fuzzy math was going on. Okay, so let's get past the fuzzy math. Let's do the MOU of understanding, and let's track it quarterly. And by golly, if they need additional money for the classrooms, we're going to have to present that case to our citizens and once again, man up and do what's needed.
Educate our children.
That's what I say, Mayor.
I don't disagree. The school board has to make a decision up front prior to the year of whether or not we cover a program or not. Whether we track it quarterly or not, we need to convince the school board that the funding is there to not cut those programs. So how do we do that? That's what I meant by mechanism, because if the superintendent and the school board meets and all of what we said here gets conveyed to them, they still have a fiduciary responsibility to say the money is there or not. And if it's not there, they're going to make a decision to cut.
Can we do that through the
So how do we do
creditworthiness of the city through a letter of credit?
I think
What's an instrument that we could use for that?
Let me think on that one.
Okay.
Because we just need them to know that
They got the
Again,
money.
if you go back to their discussion, they say councils in the past have promised stuff, all of that baloney, and it hasn't materialized. And we don't want to go on a promise. We want a mechanism in place that they're confident as a board that they can make a decision to keep those programs and the funding's going to be there, and that we're not at the end of this thing going, well, why did you do that? The council has a track record of not saying one thing and doing another. We got to get out of that. So whatever that instrument is, John.
You cut me off before me. I'm
right,
going
go
to
ahead.
say this. We're saying that they're going to have what they need. But I want to correct a couple of things because you're dramatizing this and trying to make us look like we've been doing something wrong. First of all, the money is not late. That's plenty of time to order what we want to. I've been doing government contracting for over 20 years. There's something called subject to availability of funds. They could order anything they want to anyway. And nobody who deals with the federal government has had a full-year contract for the last 6 years. That's just the way it's been, because we've been under continuing resolutions, sequestration, and all this other stuff. So companies who deal with government entities know this. So ordering the books would not have been a problem with them, as long as they knew they were going to get a budget on July the 1st.
Right.
There's not a company out there that wouldn't accept that contract with the word subject to availability of funds, and I did $1.3 billion of contracts personally myself. All right, so with that line in every one of them. So that's not the issue. The thing is, what we're doing tonight is
They've been asking for 3 months for textbook fund and not moving forward. And you're saying that's not an issue?
You couldn't give the money back until you got it back. We had to be returned. We had to be returned before you gave it back. Well, my point is, we're going to give them a budget on one first. So now we're making a good faith effort tonight. We're going to give them this money tonight, which means they can go out tonight to tomorrow and order these textbooks. So let's not make it dramatic. Let's do what we're going to do. This is our good faith effort now to make sure those kids have what they need come to open the school year, and we're going to make sure that all those programs are funded. We're just not. You got to stop feeding that fire and let this thing play it out. We're all making our good faith effort. Let's don't make something more of it is. Let's just do this, Mayor, and not dramatize it, okay?
We can give them money to finish out the year.
We need to give them money to finish out the year.
If they need $300,000 or $400,000 to finish out the year, I got no problem with that. I got no problem with that. But let's not keep throwing rocks at each other, Mr. Mayor. Can you stop doing that?
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Randall.
I'm going to close it out. I'm the liaison with the school board. All that, and I'm very much aware of what the needs are because I talk with them on there. So I'm seeing the funding is needed, and I recognize the fact that it is needed. And I will be continuing. I'm not giving up being a liaison with the school system.
We're going to take care of Ms. Randall.
Okay. And I want to make sure that they are taken
Start
care
tonight.
of. And that's what this is all about. Okay, and I want you to understand
Ms.
that.
Meeks.
All right, I got one more item I forgot to bring up. They would like to have $193,000 for the fire alarm so they could do it while the kids are out of school. If that's given to them tonight, they can have it done. That July will shove them in the beginning. All right, it's budgeted for next year. It's budgeted for next year. They know it's next year. That's one thing. That's one of the items. The other item is the self-insurance piece. They're willing to go self-insurance if we put the piece of $1 million in the budget for liquidated if they go over. So they will go self-insured. And last year at the same table, we told them we'd give them $1 million if they went self-insured. Because they said that's what it's going to cost them more. If they didn't spend it, they give it back to the city. Now, I gave y'all a list of items. Me and Elizabeth met with Costello.
John and Finance have that list?
I don't know.
Y'all have that list?
We'll get them that list.
Yeah, give
them one that has that.
And Bishop, I'll get to you
Yes.
next. The fire alarm system, they say they have been explaining to us, meaning our staff, the urgency for this and the reason why they needed that money now, not into next year's budget. This has also been 2 months ago. They've already got quotes and they've got people ready to go as soon as the school doors close.
Yep.
And if we wait and don't budget that till later, then they're saying that the contractor is saying, that's not what we quoted, and there may be some issues, and there may be a timing issue to get this done during
Starting
the
next
summer.
year, right.
So they want to have the thing done by the summer. And so, again, that's just moving money forward. Because what you're doing is you're telling the guy he can get in there when you close school. So he's expecting to go then, and we don't ratify, and the budget cycle doesn't start until what?
July 1st.
July 1st. So you've already missed half your summer. So
Yes.
you're saying the guy can't go to work until the money is
Let
there?
me help, okay?
Please.
We're simplifying the history of the fire alarm. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and let's not revise the history, okay? There's a way to do this, and that's to do a dual system. You put the fire alarm over the existing system, so you're not without coverage. The 193 is in the budget, the capital budget. It'll be available July 1. Everything can be lined up and ready to go July 1. And it's not an issue. But to say that we're dragging our feet is not true. You have to go back and look at the documents that you've got, guys. Now,
But the contract they got now, they want the guy in the school when the kids are out the end of this month, not wait till July. How do we allow that to happen so the guy can get this in the system installed over the summer?
That's simple, Mayor. That's simple, Mayor. The contract isn't paid until the job is performed.
Sounds like that problem's with the contractor, not with the financing. For years, my companies I worked for sold food for summer school in June, and we didn't get our money until it was approved in the new budget. I mean, that happens all the time, Mayor.
So we're going to tell the school board, go ahead and let the guy start the day the schools are available, and we'll make sure you got the money by July 1st, and they're supposed to go off on those directions. All right, we need to send
Most
something in writing to
contractors
them, letting them know that they're authorized to go ahead and let that contractor in there the minute that school is closed.
as for the $500,000, remember, you appropriated X millions of dollars for their budget, okay? And they tell you that they're not going to overspend their budget, their appropriation,
And they will
because they
not.
can't. I mean, it's against the law. Now they're saying that they need an additional $500,000. So is it a cash flow issue, or do they want their budget amended so that it's whatever you appropriated last year plus another $500,000? That doesn't make sense, guys. Is it a cash flow issue? I don't think it is. Again, you haven't had anybody come up to you in the last 3 months and say, hey, our current budget is not adequate. Not a word has been said about that until tonight. And so technically what you're hearing is that how much is their round numbers? 170?
Their general fund?
Yeah.
134.
134 million is what you appropriated. Now, if you entertain the $500,000, you're amending their budget to $134.5 million. And they have told you time after time after time that they're going to live within their budget. So I think it's only fair to ask the question, because that's nearly a penny on the tax rate.
March, I'll take a whole parade.
Okay, where's the justification?
But,
For the $500,000?
Yeah.
They're saying they got $40,000, and I don't know if you stayed here till 12 o'clock like I did. I heard plenty of paper, not getting raises, we're cutting the stem, cutting this. Right after that meeting, I called them next day. Matter of fact, I tried to call them that night and sat down. Me and Elizabeth went and met them. I said, if the kids are struggling that bad, I mean, you got just on the sports stuff. I heard about the STEM, so I went and talked to some of the players. Some of the kids got full uniforms, the other ones just got shirt and bottoms. Is that really how we want our kids to go? They just won a state championship. You got kids over at Wilson.
Why
They're playing with years.
Why haven't
and
they been outfitting them,
I don't
Danny?
know. Look,
I don't understand.
it came to my attention. I acted like I was supposed to. I set up a meeting.
Yeah.
And everybody at this table could have done the same thing I did.
and I think a lot of that money that they want, that they've asked back in other forms and have not had
And
the
did
money
not
returned.
receive it.
and however they have their budget, however the superintendent and the board was using it, they used it.
Bishop.
And so they're sitting here now, I'm getting calls from the playground equipment
Yeah, it's still
at Hodges Manor that they had $25,000 allocated for has been frozen, and they had to give about 15 of that money back to the city.
Well, I mean,
So something's not jiving up. If they
Craddock
had
Middle School.
25,000 for the playground,
the lady wrote a $67,000 check back. That's principal, you know? I
so
said
they're having to give money back, so something's going on.
She's spent on
I
her
will
own
check
personal
with them.
card $6,700 for our kids.
Right.
All right?
She
I can
needs
check
to,
the-
she needs to be a speaker to the
Yeah,
school
we need
board.
to check and find out what's going on
So
Are
we
you
need to put the
really
money
going to
there.
speak to your
Yeah.
boss like that?
and
Are
make
you
sure
gonna
it's there.
Yeah.
I
No,
would.
no, you won't.
Sure.
Because you got to have a job.
I'm responsible for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay.
They need the operating money as well, Dana.
Bishop.
We need to put the money in there.
But Danny, you know, the overall question is, the question that's still, people are still asking, with all those needs, why are you returning money?
Or why haven't you spent it?
Why wasn't that money encumbered?
I asked the same question. Why didn't it
I
get
mean,
to the teachers?
that is
to the kids.
That is the simplest question that even tonight, that question has not been answered.
That's right.
Why are you returning so much money when there's so many needs?
All right. Well, you're talking about the 13.4 million.
Yeah.
I'm not getting up here and beating them up. I feel like we got a new superintendent. We
I'm
have
not
to
beating
we
him up.
have to
We're
go
beating
and
him up.
search for a superintendent. He's gonna come in this cloud. Well, I mean, just look. And I've been one of the biggest ones to bash the superintendent. I ripped him
not-
from one end to
I'm
the other.
not.
I'm not
All right, so
bashing him.
I'm not.
Dr. Edmonds.
Mayor, we're going back to what was, what didn't happen. It's time to put those things behind us and time to start fresh.
Correct.
There are a lot of things, mistakes that we made, mistakes that they made. So in order for us to move ahead, we got to give everybody an opportunity to start on a clean slate. And so if this is what the chairman of the school board is requesting, and this is the direction that he wants to go in, and he's pleased with it, and some members on the school board are pleased with it, then we ought to forge ahead, and then we ought to do our due diligence. We can't tell them how to do it. They're elected officials just like we
right.
are, and give them the opportunity to do it the way it's supposed to do it. And our job would be to make sure that it's
Oversight.
being done by the rules and regulations. And let's move ahead. We're wasting time going back. beating
Give
this
them
over and
what?
over.
I don't, I'm a little unclear.
Well, for the textbooks, for example.
Oh, yeah.
If that's what they
Oh, yeah.
want.
Well,
They
that's
got to
this
have the
piece,
books.
but they need to finish
They
the
need to
year
have
out
the
with the
books.
operating. There's something going on with that operating money that they need this additional funds. We need to give them the money to do whatever it is they need to finish out the
if they
year.
don't spend it, they're gonna give it back to us.
That's exactly right. So it needs to be there.
He said, he said, look, Mr. Steele will open up our books to you anytime you want to come read them. Anytime you want to sit down, he'll explain it to it. That hadn't been in the past. You can't say it has. You know what I mean?
Why did they return the money with all those needs?
I know where you want me to take this. I'm not going there.
So we need to make sure, Bill, that they've got the money to finish out the year and do
You'll
the
need
things
to
that they
find out
need.
that
And just like Danny said, if the money's not there.
We need, I
That's our
trust,
option.
but I want to verify that money is needed.
Right.
And if we don't verify, we're not doing our job as elected officials.
That's true.
Mayor, can we agree to do this $2.1 million at the beginning of our meeting, and we can massage and figure out the rest?
No, it's a textbook. We need to handle all of this page. We're not going to sit here and play with this. This is legitimate, but we need to do the rest of this.
We're doing the
I
activity
need the
money.
activity money that's going to be tonight, right?
Doing that.
The activity money is tonight.
Activity and the textbook money will be tonight.
Good night.
And the fire alarm, as well as the opting money to finish the year. It all needs
All
to
be
be done.
tonight.
Right, that's
Need to
it.
do it all tonight.
Have a, Mr. Meeks, what's the numbers on the extra money? Tell me.
500,000.
To
No, he actually asked for 6.2.
the 500,000. What's the?
He's saying that what he told me was, he said, look, we're at $40,000. And I said, that does not make no sense for us to have our school system down to $40,000. And they have money now, but they still have, what, four or 5 weeks left? And they're going to have a overflow, a balance of $40,000. I just think that's...
You know, guys, we cannot sit here at this table.
They gave back $13.4 million. What is the big deal about the $500,000? They don't spend it in the next 60 days. We get it back.
I'm talking about $5 million. I'm not talking about $500,000. We don't sit here at the table and blindside the city manager and the CFO and say, write us a check and we'll send it down the hall for $5 million.
Well,
just
guess
told you
what?
we don't have $5 million.
We get to write a check.
We don't have $5 million unless we get it out of the fund balance. You want to raise taxes tonight? Make the motion.
No, I think we're going to close.
Where are we with this? Do we have
I'm
4
in
people that want to
favor,
give
yes.
them the operating money, get the money out for the alarm system for Wilson, as well as include the textbook fund?
Yes.
Is there 4 people that want to do that here? Yes.
Yes.
Danny's yes, you're yes.
Yes.
You're yes, that's 4. Okay, we need to make that happen for the meeting tonight. They get the operating money for the $500,000. They get the money for the operating of the alarm system, whatever that is, to turn that contract on.
The
day
alarm
the school-
system money is in the budget.
I understand. For them to turn them on now, to
You're not
do it
giving
the
it to
day
them.
the school's over, and the operational piece.
The fire alarm money is in the fiscal budget, Mayor.
Okay.
Whatever mechanism we need to have them start, to get that contract awarded and have that guy start is what I'm saying. And if you can do some type of bridge to the money in July, then I'm fine with that.
Is this what the vice
No.
mayor is?
This is one of the 3 things. We need to change this to include the other 2. Change this to include the $500,000 that Danny just mentioned, as well as whatever language that authorizes the alarm system work to be done post haste,
Activity fund.
and the activity fund.
The activity fund's already on the agenda.
Activity fund's part of the
That's
agenda
already
tonight.
covered. So we add
We
those
don't
other
need
2
that.
items here, the $500,000 and the alarm system to this. And then we'll do this beginning of the meeting.
Well, that's our, Mayor.
Items submitted by council.
Yeah, because I was just talking to the attorney about that. This specifically says textbook, so we'd have to do something different.
Well, I can redraft
Redraft.
it, but I need somebody who knows exactly what it is you're doing to tell me what to put in the ordinance, because there's been a lot of talking back and forth. I understand the 193, even though I'm not sure why that needs to be done tonight, but because the school won't be empty until the middle of June anyway. And 2 weeks later, the money kicks in as part of the CIP that's going to be adopted at the end of May. Okay, so logistically, there's, if you can't start if you don't have enough money to start a contract 2 weeks before that's not a critical thing here. The $500,000, what's the source of that money? Is it the undesignated fund balance?
Operating, yeah. Yeah, but
Is that
used for
closing out
operating.
this funding?
You appropriate by category 2. What category does it go to? Does it go to instructions? Which category does it go to, ladies and gentlemen?
Give me 1 second, I'll find out.
Of what money?
That's the operating.
I don't know.
Remember, you, last year, or the current year, you made lump sum appropriations. This year, you appropriated the funds by category.
Operation material and supplies.
Right. $500,000 in operation materials and supplies. 2.1 million for the textbook fund, and you're gonna, put
2.1 million.
2.1 million for the textbook fund. Right, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. $500,000 for operational and materials, and we're gonna give them some language to allow them to start work on the Wilson alarm system as soon as they wanna get started. Whatever they've
fund.
got.
Because we're going to need
The
that.
activity fund.
And then how much, what was the activity piece?
He's already has it.
That's already there, so we don't need to include that. So we've already got an ordinance for the activity. We just need this one modified to include these 2 items and some type of language, George, that allows them to start on the alarm system.
$500,000 for operations and material, is it?
Operation and materials,
Mr.
read it,
Meeks, what
Danny.
did you say, operations?
Materials and supplies.
And that money would have to be encumbered during the current fiscal year.
It's got to be spent. Remember,
Yeah.
encumbrance.
They're not
Okay.
saying they're going to spend it. They're
Right, that's
saying,
right. Let's move on.
Let's
We got
move
that.
on.
You got
Let's
the
get
category.
beyond that.
I'm confused.
George, are you clear on this?
You
Yes, sir.
All right.
clear.
But what were you saying, John?
Hold it. Let's get this straight.
Okay. 2.1 for the textbooks.
Correct.
We've got that.
Right,
0.5 for operations and materials and supplies.
okay.
Okay. And what was the other, were the two other items or just the capital?
It's not counted.
Just one.
We need to-
We'll find something to
Right,
put
we'll
under.
get that. And the other item is already covered tonight,
Right.
which is on the, already on the
The
agenda.
activities are
Yes.
already on the agenda.
Right.
And so the other thing
And
is the
some
capital.
language what allows them to start work and whatever they put the bid out for the Wilson alarm system.
Yeah.
If the guy gave them a price to save money to start the day the school ends, then we need to make sure that they got that there, whatever language that
Now,
is.
see, that, Mr. Mayor, honestly, to me, that is the one thing that's not necessary.
Okay.
Is that part about the capital, the fire alarm system, because that's coming, they're going to have money available July the 1st. They're not going to be able to start working on the system until the middle of June anyway. And by the time they have their first draw, the schools will have the money that was appropriated to
That
them.
makes sense.
We can talk to them about that. All right, leave it out.
Plus the
All right.
number's wrong. Okay.
Let's close and get this
Okay.
done.
So let's just
All right.
leave it at that.
Put those two up there, modify this to add those two. We'll talk.
What's the
with-
right number?
about
What's the right number, John?
189.
44.
Yeah.
It's 144. Now,
But
what's
whatever,
$30,000-$40,000 among?
We'll just
We can
add,
handle it.
we'll add the
Swear.
$500,000 to the
No problem.
That's the
operation,
number they put down.
to this
No
one.
problem.
To the
And you've got the
2 point, right.
activities already done, that's 3 of the
Right.
4, and the
They
capital one is
they just
done.
give you some numbers, Danny.
I know,
Very good.
you know?
All right, somebody want to take us in the close?
Hey, can it?
I move to
Bill
go,
asked me a question.
wait a
Can I
minute.
answer it?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Bill asked me about encumbrances. An encumbrance is not an expenditure, okay? In accounting, in GAAP, and that's what we all use, the good has to be received by the end of the fiscal year. Okay, then you encumber the funds so that when the invoice comes in, let's say that you order a pen on the 2nd of June, it comes in on the 15th, so it meets that requirement. The invoice doesn't come in until the 10th of July. You encumber the $2 for the pen, and then when the invoice comes in, it's liquidated. So it counts as an expenditure. And so you're absolutely correct. My understanding about the textbooks is that the contract is ready to go. It's ready to be let. I hope I made sense in that discussion. So there's an encumbrance is not an expenditure.
yeah.
But I think we're good. George's advice is
My question was, this $500,000, does that have to be spent by when?
if it's not spent, then it's
By
by the
June
time.
June 30th.
June 30th, and
And
it-
Now, they told you they've spent it,
No, they said if they don't spend it, they're going to return it.
like the 13 million.
I want you to think about.
And they returned it.
I want
And
you
the
to
funds
think about
down to
where you are.
40,000.
But they had all the needs. That's what I'm getting at there.
Their budget, their total budget's more than $160 million. Are you telling me that here we are in the first or second week in May, and they're down to $40,000 out of a $161 million budget?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. You know, just simple math, you divide 12 and 161, they've got a ton of money still. So I think the question is it a cash flow issue or is it a budget issue?
I think we need to
And
know
I think
that.
it's not clear. But if you want to move me forward, that's
We still haven't resolved what the crowd is going to be talking about.
The
And-
5.2
and
million
that-
for next year.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we haven't resolved any of that.
Okay, so do we
I
need to
said-
have another budget meeting tomorrow, next week, whenever?
Hey, I had one at 12 midnight
Danny,
tonight.
we need to get with the school administration
And go
and
through
get
it.
these numbers so we're hatching it and all talking together. Now, how you want to have that meeting,
think you come in, you bring,
But we need to have those people at the table. We can't keep talking, leaving one meeting and going back to another one. They need to be here. We need to discuss this $5.2 million.
Have we been removed from the education?
And, okay,
what committee?
No, I'll check.
okay, go ahead, Ms. Ryan. Read us in the close.
I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.23711 for the following purpose: discussion concerning the acquisition of 2 parcels of real property for public purposes in the downtown and Truxton sections of the city as permitted under subsection A3. Discussion concerning the disposition of publicly held real property related to the MLK project as permitted under subsection A3, and consideration of candidates for appointment to city boards and commissions as permitted under subsection A1.
Second.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Meeks?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Randall?
Yes.
Mayor Wright?
Yes.
We are in close. Thank you.
Taking off the education.